Welcome to Hope in the Light of Suicide. I'm Tammy White. I'm your host, along with my co-host Bonnie Snyder. I'm also the founder of the Bobby White Foundation, and we're here to help bring hope and awareness and try and stop the stigma and just getting people talking about suicide and helping suicide loss survivors. Today we have another special guest. The last couple of weeks has been pretty rough. And Valentine's Day is a hard day for those of us who have lost loved ones anyways, but it's extra hard for this family. It was a difficult day for me too. I bet. I didn't even, during the holidays, Christmas, I put out the Christmas decorations and all that, and then had every intentions of doing Valentine's. Did not do one. I put out the last card Bobby gave me, and that was it.
It is strange that, when we, as we were processing through, holidays, especially for, our family, Valentine's Day in particular, where, before it had, the traditional, Valentine feeling to it, vibe to it. It does not anymore. It does not anymore.
I did make a steak and potato dinner, though. That's what we would usually have. But anyways, so as I mentioned, we do have a special guest here today, and I'm going to have my co-host Bonnie Snyder introduce her. They have a very special connection. So.
We do have a very special connection. I am, again, equally thrilled for the guest that we have on today. We've been, trying for a bit to get her on. As we go through the interview, you'll understand why she's not been able to join us before. She's in a special population, and that will make sense. But it is my great, great pleasure to introduce to you all Kira Earls. Kira is, oh my God, Kira is Ayden's mom. Although she is remarried to, a fabulous guy, Nick, I still claim her as my daughter-in-law. She will forever be my daughter-in-law. But she is Ayden's mom, as well as, the mother to, let me just say, she gave me 3 beautiful grandchildren. Actually, let me back that up. I have 5 beautiful grandchildren from Kira. 2 of which, are, not mine by blood, but that doesn't mean anything in our family. So Kira, thank you for, being, joining us today and arranging your schedule. We would have loved to have had you, share the guest spot with Carl a couple of weeks ago, but, I'm just going to throw that. Kira is a nurse, and so, her work has graciously arranged her schedule to allow her to be with us today. So, I thank, her doctors and her bosses for letting her, share the platform with us. And part of this was to, as we continue our conversation about, anniversaries and, how we deal, with losses, to have Kira walk us through this journey, because her walk in this journey is very different from the rest of us. So Kira, welcome to the show today. All right. Oh, you're very welcome.
And that's because my daughter's sitting behind me, but she's not really on the show.
Is that Raven?
Yes.
Tell Raven Nana gives her permission that if she wants to, pop over, she very well may. As said, our show is very unscripted. It is, the discussion goes as the discussion goes. So yeah, Raven's, more than welcome to, join on and, lend some insight if she likes.
Yeah, it might be good to hear her part.
Absolutely.
Her thoughts and feelings also.
So, Kira, what we would like to do, and I know that this is, that tragedy was horrid, for all of us. But if you could, Walk us through that day.
That day, I'm going to start by saying we were all sick with the flu the week before. So we were still all recovering. Not contagious, but, still taking cold medicine. In fact, that evening before, both Ayden and I had taken cold medicine because we needed some help sleeping. So he actually got the cold medicine out, gave me one of the packets of the Tylenol cold, and took one for himself. And then went to his bedroom and said goodnight. When I woke up, I did my normal routine. I was a little shaken because I had such a vivid, crazy dream that I can still remember to this day. But I let the other people sleep in. I kind of crept out of the room so Nick didn't wake up, and I met Trent in the living room that morning. It was Valentine's Day, and he wanted to take his girlfriend out to breakfast. So he was leaving early. So we did our normal, have a good day, drive safe kind of thing. He left. And I went back to finish getting ready for work. And about 6:30, I went to Ayden's room. And I knocked on the door like I do every morning. He didn't respond, so I just opened it. And when you open his door, first thing you see is his bed. And he wasn't in it, but the closet light was on. And so I said, "Oh, good, you're up." And then no response. So I stepped into the bedroom. And at a quick glance, it looked like he was just standing in his closet. He was taller than me. And the bar from the closet was about his, he was a little taller than that. But then I noticed, as he had his back to me, that his feet weren't touching the ground. He had bent his knees and was just hanging there. And I don't really recall much of what I did from there. I do know that my husband said I let out this horrific scream, which is what woke him up and brought him to Ayden's room to be with me. And it took him a minute to realize what was going on as well. And then it was a crazy mess after that. He grabbed Ayden and tried to lift him, yelled at me to call 911, which we did, and it just was a blur from there on. We ended up somehow, Nick got him down, and the next thing I remember is EMS telling me, "Ma'am, you have to get off of him," because I was holding him and screaming. And see him that way is just permanently in our minds. After that, they treated the whole thing like a crime scene. They separated us and questioned Nick about why he would touch Ayden, which I thought was crazy, but I understand. They know that they have to treat it like a crime scene until they know what happened. And who doesn't try to help him, They had us leave our place and sit in the car while they processed the scene. At some point, I called Carl and told him he needed to come over, that I found Ayden that way. And I'm sure I didn't make sense because I was just so distraught and didn't know what to think. Carl came. My mom came. We all had to sit in our cars, and we just were out there waiting, which seemed like for hours. I remember the police officer had asked me if he could contact the school and let them know what was going on. And I told them yes. And at that point, I was very concerned because by now it had been a couple hours and Trent should be at his school. And Raven would have been at work. And I did not want in any way somehow for them to find out without me knowing, without me being able to tell them. I wanted them with me. I just kept panicking and asking the officers, please let me leave to go get my children. But they said they had to finish before we could go. Halfway through, I got a text message from Ayden's girlfriend's mom asking me if Ayden was okay. She said that her daughter had come to her that morning and said they broke up that night before. And that I broke down at that point because we had no idea what had happened, why Ayden would have done this. And I remember giving the phone to Carl to call her and let her know what happened because I wanted to scream, you did this. You could have called me last night. Why didn't you call me? As irrational as that sounds, I know it wasn't her fault. It just was kind of what came out.
I can only.
When they took Ayden away, they would finally go get Raven and Trent, and then we had to break it to each one of them individually because they were in different spots. Telling my other children that their brother was gone was so hard.
I can
only imagine how they felt seeing us come all in. It's not very often that your mom, your dad, your stepdad, your stepmom are all coming into your school or work at the same time.
Kira, my heart breaks for you and with you. As a mom, I cannot imagine finding or going through what you went through, in finding Ayden. We've been going through this book and highlighting the Lost Survivors' Bills of Rights. And, one of them is I have the right to know what can be known about what happened. And, I know, you have spoken to, we have, talked, about, what may have motivated this this situation, that led to Ayden not being with us anymore. You're also a nurse, as well. Can you share with the audience, how you reconcile the, the experience with your profession, in the medical field as a nurse, like I know, and again, we've shared this, for me as a mental health professional, we tend to compartmentalize, or we use that terminology, compartmentalize. We put this here. As a nurse on the medical side of the house, how is it different for you, or how have you been able to process, making sense of what happened while experiencing what happened?
I feel a lot of guilt because that evening before, he was off. He was not normal. But I chalked that up to he was also sick. We were all recovering from the flu. So when he said, I just am tired, I just assumed, okay, he's tired. He doesn't feel good. I kind of forced him to do a project with me that evening. He kept getting up and saying, oh, are we done yet? And I'd be like, no, come back, spend more time with me. But now, knowing that he probably was planning this during that whole time I was with him, those signs that looked like he was just sick were probably his depression was taking over. Those demons inside his head were not speaking any sense to him. They were lying to him, telling him that he needed to do this.
And I know that you have been very active in, support groups and, for lack of a better word, agencies that, talk about, loss, suicide loss, especially suicide loss amongst youth. Can you tell, the audience what are, some of the things that you have done, to advocate for, loss and, these kind of circumstances so, no other parent, one experiences what, you experience as a parent, while at the same time, platforms like this, bringing awareness to those of us that have gone through this situation.
When it first happened, shortly after, probably about a month after, Raven, my mother, and I started attending a support group, which hasn't been around very long. It's kind of rare to find them close by. Ironically, the name of the group is Hope. So it meets on Wednesdays, and we attended that. And that helped for a while, and it actually got me pretty motivated to do more for the youth. This group is for 18 and over. And our problem in our area seems to be our children. Our children are not supported that way. So we ended up doing a movie night at one of the local theaters. We sold tickets and were able to show a movie about suicide and invited people, and that kind of got the ball rolling. I had so much community help and help from the school district with that. Now they're currently starting a program for middle school and high school here at our school district that will allow counselors from Tri-County, our state's funded one, to come in and be with these kids. It will be more of a peer-led group, hopefully. And some adults, myself included, will be able to take a youth first aid mental health class to be there to support them, hoping that we can have something for them to meet with. With COVID, it's been really hard. They're doing a lot of virtual. They don't get a chance to be in person, which is what I think these children really need. But COVID has been a problem, so we haven't been able to do that.
And I think, thankfully for, having, COVID, having the virtual platform, at least it gives them something, without nothing. Besides the support groups, what else have you been doing to help you through this tragedy?
I have a lot of family, others. Unfortunately, there were a couple other children shortly after Ayden who passed from suicide. Those parents and I have stayed in contact with each other. It seems that other parents get us better than anyone else. Suicide loss is different from any other loss, and being a parent, it feels even more isolated. You feel like another parent is the only one who really gets you. So we've kept in contact. I do journal. When I have my horrible breakdowns, I try to remember to journal. Sometimes I don't always remember that I can, but I write letters to Ayden in my journal. That helps a little bit. He has a memorial at the school. I like to go visit that. We haven't earned for him. I can't put his ashes in it. I just can't bring myself to do that yet. I try to talk about him with Mikey, who's my littlest one. He likes to talk about his brother and things that his brother would do with him, which is nice. Try to bring up happy memories.
Yeah, it is. it's something to, remember, all of the, the happiness and whatnot. Like I remember the day, bringing him home, or, when you guys brought him home, or even like when he was born and he had all that blonde hair. And I just remember it's like, where'd the blonde hair come from? Like there he is as a baby.
I
And
love that
I
picture.
I know it's one of my favorites as well. But I'm like, that blonde hair. And then I was like, Di, he gets his blonde hair and his blue eyes from his mom, and then, watching him grow and, just what a beautiful soul that it was. Like, for me, it's, a little strange in a sense doing this interview, because I know some of the answers already. But, again, we are, thankful that, you are able to, share, the firsthand, perspective. There's, guys, that is, Aydin, his mom, his brother, and his sister. Because I'm biased.
That was our annual, just in case we don't make it out of the haunted house selfie.
Kira, can you tell us a little bit about Aydin?
Aydin, if you ask my other children, they like to say he's my favorite. We moms don't have a favorite. I'm getting a look right now that says, yeah, he's your favorite. But Aydin just was so sweet all the time. He wanted to do what you wanted him to do. He just wanted to make you happy, no matter who you were. That seemed like his life goal was to make others happy. With his friends, with his family, strangers. He just was unique that way. He also had a very brilliant mind.
Oh my God! Yeah.
That kid could solve a Rubik's Cube faster than I could ever imagine. And weird ones too. He had all different shapes.
Yeah, I think I remember, with the, I think he invented the Rubik's Cube for whoever Mr. Rubik was. Can you?
He was
Go ahead.
just a light. His smile could light up a room, and he wanted you to be happy. I just don't. It's so hard to think. I know the kids tell me that he did these things, that he got in trouble, and I know he did. It's just hard to remember those afterwards. He had compared himself a lot to his older brother Trent, who's also very brilliant. And he would say a lot, I just am not as smart as Trent. I'm not as good as Trent. And that was something that he had a hard time with. He had a hard time with his self-esteem. He could not see his own brilliance.
And I agree with you there. His, desire to, he wanted to, it was always help. I remember, them being here that summer, that they came for a visit, and the other kids were, playing video games. And, he came into, I forget whether I was in the kitchen or in the living room or something. And, he was like, Nana, what can I help you with?
Yeah, you talked a lot about it.
Yeah. And I was like, you're on vacation. Go.
A kid that age is supposed to be having fun instead.
Go have fun. And he was like,
Yeah.
oh, they're playing video games. I'm just, what can I help you with? And, I was like,
And that's how he was at home too.
Yeah.
Just, Mom, can I go with you? Do you need help at the store? Do you need help cooking? He was learning to cook eggs in every way he could possibly imagine. He had two he was trying to master before he passed. So unique.
Kira,
We were happy when he found archery. That he had something that was his own and not that he could compare himself to others. That seemed to bring him out of his shell a little bit more.
I want to ask you a question that I asked Carl when he was on the show. How has Aydin's passing then I'm going to segue into something else here in a minute. How has Ayden's passing affected, if at all, the relationship with your other children, and their relationship with each other?
With Dominic and Trent have definitely become a lot closer. Trent was not as close to them. Aydin and Dominic were best friends. They shared a room. They were closer in age. They just were inseparable. Since Aydin has passed, Trent has really stepped up in that role with Dominic. They're together all the time when we have him. I know Raven felt like her and Trent grew apart. I do feel that relationship is mending more. I do feel like they spend a little bit more time together. I do see that the children have reached out to Carl more. They spend more time at his house. There's more of a regular visit with him now, which I'm happy because then they get all of them together. My relationship with the children, I don't feel that it has changed. My love for them hasn't changed. However, I'm super anxious all the time that something is going to happen to one of them. So I'm probably way more clingy than I used to be. If I text them and they don't text back within a couple minutes, I'm kind of panicked. And I'm sure as they're adults, that's pretty annoying. But it's something I'm trying to work on. But I'm really panicked every time that they're not with me.
And, I want to segue, as we talk about, relationships and how, relationships have changed, because we did a role reversal 6 months later.
Yeah.
And, I just remember, and I mean, I know my experience, but if, have you share your experience when we went from, I am talking to you, trying to get you through, Ayden's loss. What did that switch feel like for you when it went from now you were there for me after Patrick, and and I've shared on the show that I felt you and I've always had a closeness, although I don't think sometimes we didn't feel that closeness, if that makes sense. But for me, I feel that our relationship has really, really strengthened through these tragedies, more so than it was before. I mean, not that it needed strengthening, if that makes sense. But how did that role reversal, feel to you? If you can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like when you were there for me, when you were talking me through things, with your professional experience, I had that resource that was beneficial. And then when the roles reversed, in a weird way, helping you kind of gave me a little bit of a purpose. I felt like, well, I can use my tragedy to show someone else how you can get through this. Get through this isn't a good way to say that, because this is not something I will get over or get through, but coping mechanisms are kind of able to be shared. Ways to get through each hard minute, even if you have to take it a minute at a time.
I remember sharing with you when we were talking, when I remember saying to you, and I forget which of the thousands of conversations we've had, in between the two. Remember all of that stuff I said to you after Ayden? That was the dumbest thing I've ever said. And putting it into another perspective. And I said this privately, and I will say this publicly. I thank God for you, and that role reversal, because I think that's what got me through a lot, with Patrick, and, of course, getting, us through, still, with Aydin. Talk to me about now, if you would. How has Valentine's Day changed for you?
Oh, Valentine's Day is not a day that exists as a holiday. It is 100% completely the day I lost my son. We this year decided to try and do a family activity, which surprisingly turned out pretty well. It kept our minds occupied for a couple hours. We were together as a family, as big and crazily blended family as we are. But afterwards, when that ended, it was back to everybody was isolated and sad. And that day just, I don't know if it'll ever be something other than sadness. It's a hard day to get through. And the days leading up to it are hard. You almost feel like you need a vacation from the emotional roller coaster you're on.
Tell us about that special event.
We decided to go to a breakout room. It was something only Ayden had ever done. Surprisingly, he had gone with a class trip to this breakout room, and then he also had gone with a friend. And no one else in our family had done this before. So it was unique that we got to do something that Ayden was the only one who had experienced, and we got to experience it as a family in his honor. All of us went, Carl, Joy, my sister-in-law, Micah, her husband, Jose, my brother-in-law, Brady, my husband, Nick. The kids all went, minus Mackenzie. We all split into 2 different groups, and it's a team building activity. So it was nice to be able to work together, use our brains for something other than worrying about what's going to happen next, and be together. Yeah, it was pretty nice.
And for those of y'all here in Florida, you may know it as the escape rooms, that we have here in Pasco. And it is an experience. I remember doing one. And I was pleased I got to FaceTime with them right before they went in to the room and say hi. It's like I kind of wish I was there, but it's wintertime in Kansas. I don't do winters.
Yeah, we were just talking about the cold weather.
Exactly.
Kira, can I ask you? We've been talking a lot about Valentine's Day, but the week prior to that was also Ayden's birthday. So you have 2 very difficult days very close together. Can you tell us how you manage that? I mean, it's 6-7 days, difference between
6 days apart. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which would have been this year his 16th birthday, and then of course shortly after the anniversary of his passing. How do you manage that in a week?
My work, thankfully, is very understanding. They gave me time off. I spent Ayden's birthday home with the kids and Nick. I didn't get out of my PJs again this year. His birthday was a lot harder. I grieve him, but then also what he should be doing. He should be 16 and he should be learning to drive. He should have gotten to go to high school. He never got to experience a high school. Dances, things like that. I grieve what he is missing and what he will never see and what I will never see him do. So his birthday was pretty hard to get through. And then it's kind of okay, I have to get back to work. And then just 6 days later, I'm going through this is the day I lost him. So it is an up and down time. It's just full of anxiety, full of sadness. We try to find some times in there to remember good things so that we have some laughs, but they're not so easy these few weeks.
Yeah, and when we had Carl on, he had pointed that out, that how your being with us this week and his being with us a couple weeks ago, that your respective appearances are sandwiched between his birthday and the day we lost him, and what that must feel like, how coincidental, I think, for us, that happened like that. I'm sitting here, probably realizing that Raven is probably still sitting next to you. And
She just walked away.
And I'm like, I'd love to hear, the children's perspectives, on it, but I understand that it's difficult. What words of wisdom, for lack of a better way to put it, do you have for, parents who have lost a child, via suicide, or, anybody that has, experienced a loss? What works, what doesn't work, or, more to point, what were some things that were said or done to and for you that were helpful? What are some things that were said, or done, to or for you that you were like, please don't ever do that again?
Lots of things that I would hope people would never do again. They just don't know how to talk to us. So, some things that were said to me were, don't do this. He's in a better place, so don't fret about what happened. You can't change it. I'm very aware that I cannot change what happened. It doesn't take away me wanting to know why. To have every piece of the puzzle, even if I will eventually probably accept that I can't have every piece of the puzzle, it's still something I want. I want every memory that others have of my son to be mine. I want every good, bad thing that they had ever experienced with him to be known, because I want to know every aspect of him, because it's all I have anymore. Some helpful things were, they came from other parents, my support group. Take it a minute at a time. It's okay to feel like you're drowning. You will catch your breath again. Let it come. Just make sure that you have your tribe and that you are surrounded by people who get you or will not judge you. Those have been the most helpful things, to know that other people out there understand that I will never, ever be the same, and to not judge when I have my breakdown days. I have them. I try to hide them, but they happen. I cry every single day over Ayden. I try to do it in private, but sometimes I can't help it. And that has been helpful, that people understand that.
You said the word, people don't judge me. And, through this journey, we have discussed that word stigma that surrounds, mental health, substance misuse, loss by, suicide loss. We had a guest on, on an earlier show that has a foundation that is addressing stigma. But in that, when you said, people judging you and stigma, again, as a nurse, I think I would be correct in, acknowledging that you see things that, fall under that stigma umbrella, as a medical professional. But can you talk to us about, how you have addressed stigma, or let me rephrase that. What stigma you may have experienced, and how you have addressed the stigma, and what, I always get you guys mixed up. You're on the Missouri side of the house, right? Or are you on the Kansas
Yes.
side? Okay. What in the...
Missouri.
Missouri, Kansas, area is being done to address any stigma that might exist?
We are trying to address it by talking about it more. If I had people tell me they'll pray for my son because his soul is compromised at this point because he took his own life. I've had people tell me that if I would have found Jesus, this wouldn't have happened to me, which is crazy to us because we're religious. We believe in God. It's just people's stigma. They don't understand. But I find that if I'm able to talk about him, to express that we're just a normal family, this happens regardless of who you are, what race, what financial stability you have. This happens to everyone. It's possible that it happens to your family. And the more I talk about it, the more I found that other people have had, oh, my brother died that way, or my mother took her own life, or, but they don't talk about it. It's a taboo subject. So if we talk about it, then they will understand it's okay. And it helps the healing, and it helps people understand that they're not isolated and alone, that there are other people out there who can help you.
That I experienced the exact same thing.
I was going to say, Tammy.
Yeah. I mean, for the first year and a half, I was just dealing with it. But then when I decided to speak publicly, and, I was dealing with the stigma too, and you're right, Kira, suicide does not discriminate. It doesn't matter where you come from, your background, the color of your skin, how financial well off or poor you are. It just does not discriminate. But the stigma that follows us is it's crazy. But once I finally decided to speak publicly, the same thing happened to me. I had people every single time. Now, mind you, standing in front of a group of people and they find out what you're going to talk about, I could actually feel the energy in the room change, and see it on many of the faces. Most people did not want to hear it. But every single time I have spoken publicly in front of a group, at a minimum, one person comes up and thanks me, and more often than not tells me, their experience, and they haven't spoken about it in years, if ever.
And, it's interesting that you bring that up because we have shared, on this show, that's how you and I met. You spoke
exactly.
at, a coalition meeting, and it was right after, I think it was right after Ayden's
Yes,
loss. And I was like, how can I get involved? I want to, I want to help. I just lost my grandson. And I remember something you said to me that day. And I went home, and a part of me was like, who does she think she is? But then as I sat back and I thought about it, I was like, she was right on point. But you said it's too soon. And at first, again, I was like, who does she think she is? Who is she to tell me it's too soon?
Yeah, especially you working in the mental health field.
Right. Yeah. And then I was like, again, of course, it blossomed into what we're doing now. But Kira, let me ask you, if you were talking about Ayden and somebody looked at you and said, it's too soon. Like, when is it ever? And I'm sure, Tammy, you with Bobby.
It's going to be different with everybody, because everybody deals with their grief differently. Everybody deals trying to deal with a situation like this, if you never have, we would never want you to. That's why we're trying to do this. There's just no words.
Yeah, so Kira, to that point, again, you being, the one who found Ayden, fast forward to here we are, we've just had, our second anniversary, of his loss. Do you talk to us about, was it ever too soon for you to talk about him, or do you think that perhaps maybe I should have waited to, tackle this situation, or?
Yeah, I felt compelled to do it right away. I just felt like it, in a way, helped heal me a little bit to be out there helping others. And then I pulled back because it was becoming overwhelming. And I had to feel my pain and kind of go through my pain. And then when I was able to, again, attacked it full force, you have to do it based on what you feel.
Exactly.
There is no timeline where it's too soon or too late, or it's just how you feel. If you feel you can handle it, then that's okay. Just know if you have to pull back, you have to pull back.
Yeah, that's just it. A lot of people, your tendency might be to go full force, but if you haven't taken, if you don't, and when you do that, you neglect really yourself, and that's a recipe for disaster.
Agree.
At least you had that, and you recognize that. And one other thing for you, Kira, is in your area versus where we are here, we found after talking to Carl, there's a lot more support. Like,
I know one group that is close. There is support, but it's not without a drive. Which is why the founder of my group started this group, because she was driving an hour plus for her support groups.
Okay, yeah.
So they're here. They're just pretty far out.
right.
And, to the where Carl is and where Kira is in relation to each other, may also, plays a part in what,
okay, I see.
Yeah, he's about 45 minutes from me, I think.
Okay.
So-
yeah, because when he was on, he did mention that it seems like he had
like 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes.
there was a lot more available to him where he is.
Yeah, Kira's more, beautiful place. I mean, that's a beautiful place where they live. But
But it's
they're
cold
in the,
right now.
yeah, they're in the, she's in the country, so
It is cold.
I don't want to say isolated, but they're, country area. And so, yeah, it is a drive. Kira, what, if we give you like the last few minutes, of the episode, to share, with, us and the audience, anything that you want, what would you want, the audience to hear from, you as, a mom who's experienced this and who is, continues to do what you are doing, not only for yourself, for the family, and for others that may have or experienced this already, might be on the verge of experiencing this. Yeah.
I guess I would want them to know that you can reach out for help. It is okay to talk about this. Everybody can talk about this, and the more we talk, the better we're going to be as a group, the better it's going to be to realize that mental health is way more common than you think. Hiding it has only hurt us. Aydin hiding it from me made it so I couldn't help him. Me not knowing how to talk to him or see the signs, even as a medical professional, doing this every day, I didn't see the signs because they can be so closely related to other things. Having those opening conversations with your child, spending that time talking to them at dinner, asking more than how's your day and getting a fine answer, direct questions. I've learned after this that saying, do you feel like you would harm yourself, is not going to put that in their heads. It is okay to ask that. If you're concerned that your child will hurt themselves, it is okay to directly say, I'm concerned. I feel like you might harm yourself. Is this how you're feeling? Talking about suicide does not make them complete suicide. Just like talking about sex education does not make them go out and have sex. It is preparing them for what is to come if they have these crises.
That is, I mean, you hit, a proverbial nail, right on its head, because we do talk about, many people feel, if I asked you, are you going to harm yourself? That's putting the idea in your head, when the reality is asking that question might be the very thing that that person needs to hear, because it creates that mindset that someone cares, someone's listening, someone is watching.
Well, and too, one thing that struck me that you said, Kira, is people being open and talking about it. I think I've mentioned before that 2 years prior to my husband's death, and we're on the other end of the spectrum, my husband was 62 years old. 2 years prior to that, his brother, who was 62 at the time, tried to take his life. And I didn't even know about it, and neither did my husband, until 5 months later. And when this happened, I had directly asked his wife if, if he would harm himself.
Right.
And because he had been committed to one of the veteran psych wards. And she flat out told me no. And almost exactly 2 years later, my husband successfully took his life. And I didn't find out until I directly asked my sister-in-law, my husband's youngest sister, standing in my kitchen on crutches with a broken leg, if that's what happened. And that's when I found out my brother-in-law had actually tried to take his life and thankfully was unsuccessful. But if I would have had that information, not saying that it would have made a difference, but we get to live the rest of our lives not knowing.
Right.
Because we did not have that piece of information.
And it's like Carl said when he was on the show, would it have given us another week, another day, another week, another year?
Well,
another
and
5
that's
years? We don't.
Well, and that's the same thing too with Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if I had that information, what transpired that morning, would have stopped it that day. But again, would it have stopped it?
Yeah, I said,
and
same thing with Patrick. Had I, I could tell myself, if I never would have gotten on the plane, if I would have, if my car wasn't in the shop, he would have had a car that weekend. Would he, we go through all of the what ifs.
Well, the what ifs, and that's part of the guilt that we live with too. And
which led you to develop this, the
Our
purple
purple
folder.
Actually, these are our new ones, and they're being distributed to our community partners right now. Mostly this folder is filled with information. There's some resources in there for people, but mostly it's information that we wish we would have had when we were going through this immediately after. Like I said before, I was given a piece of paper with a list of funeral homes on it, and then left to our own devices there afterwards, not finding out about other organizations, which are very few in our area. So our idea is to get this into the hands of lost survivors as soon after a suicide loss, because we're a part of the suicide, I don't know what
Network, maybe.
Yeah, that is kind of left behind. There's a lot towards prevention, which we need, but there's not much to help lost survivors.
Correct. Yeah, that's
And a statistic that a lot of people don't know, and it may have changed, is that with every suicide touches a minimum of 139 people on the average.
that's our family.
And lost survivors,
I was surprised how many people it's touched.
right? And
People that I didn't even know knew Aydin came out of the woodwork saying how it's affected them.
well, also lost survivors are at nearly a 400 times greater risk for suicide.
And to that, as we wind up, the show, we hope that you guys will, continue to support this platform that we're on. There are, many ways that you can support, here on the show. There's a QR code. You can go to, the foundation website. My birthday's coming up, just a little shout out there. I have a fundraiser, for
On
my birthday
Facebook, I saw that,
to
thank
raise,
you.
money for the foundation and to keep the show going, because, without having, this platform that, we are so graciously given, by John and We Beam TV, that allows us to bring this show to you every week. We would really appreciate the support. And as Tammy and I always say at the end of the show,
There's always hope.